Donald Trump is stopped at a red light in downtown Miami when he suddenly sees a dog being thrown out of a car. The man runs away, but the animal remains motionless. Trump, known for his determination, gets out of the car, and what he does next will shock everyone and set off a chain of events that will reveal a dark secret. Who threw the dog? And why does someone want Trump to keep quiet? The night was warm and sticky in Miami, the kind of evening where the air clung to your skin like a second layer. Donald Trump, the 78-year-old business tycoon, sat behind the wheel of his sleek black Cadillac Escalade, the hum of the engine a low growl beneath his hands. He'd just left a glitzy charity gala at one of his own properties, Trump National Doral, where he'd shaken hands, flashed his trademark grin, and raised a few million for some cause he barely remembered. The event had been a success, as always, but it left him restless. He didn't do quiet drives home often, not with the Secret Service usually tailing him, but tonight he'd wave them off. "I need some air," he'd said, and now here he was, cruising down a dimly lit street in the heart of the city. Neon signs flickered in the distance, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the windshield. Palm trees swayed lazily in the breeze, their shadows stretching long and thin over the pavement. Traffic was light, just a few cars zipping past, their headlights slicing through the humid night. Trump tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, the faint hum of talk radio droning in the background. He wasn't really listening. His mind was elsewhere, replaying the evening, the deals, the faces. It was a good night, a normal night, until it wasn't. He eased the Escalade to a stop at a red light on a quiet stretch of Biscayne Boulevard. The intersection was empty, no pedestrians, no bikes, just the distant rumble of a city that never fully slept. Trump glanced at the dashboard clock, 10:47 p.m. Late, but not too late. He leaned back in the leather seat, loosening his tie with a practiced flick of his fingers. That's when he saw it, a beat-up old sedan, maybe a Toyota, pulling over on the opposite side of the street. Nothing unusual in Miami. People parked wherever they felt like it. But something about this one made him pause. The passenger door swung open hard, slamming against the frame with a metallic thud that echoed in the stillness. A man stepped out. Average height, dark hoodie pulled low over his face, hands stuffed in his pockets. He moved fast, like he had somewhere to be, or something to hide. Trump squinted, his instincts kicking in. He'd spent decades reading people, sizing them up in boardrooms and backrooms alike. This guy wasn't right. The man darted to the rear door, yanked it open, and for a split second, Trump thought he saw movement inside. Then it happened. Something small hit the pavement. Not tossed, not dropped, but dumped. The man didn't even look at it. He slammed the door shut, jumped back into the driver's seat, and peeled out, tires squealing as the sedan vanished into the night, taillights swallowed by the dark. Trump's eyes narrowed. "What the hell was that?" he muttered, leaning forward. The thing on the sidewalk didn't move. At first, he thought it might be trash, a bag, maybe, or some junk the guy didn't want. But then the Escalade's headlights caught it, painting it in a stark white glow. It wasn't trash. It was a dog. Small, scrawny, its fur matted with dirt and grime. It just lay there, sprawled out like it had given up, not even twitching as the world rolled on around it. The light turned green. A car behind him honked, sharp and impatient. Trump didn't budge. His hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles whitening. He'd seen a lot in his life. Crooked deals, shady characters, people who'd sell their own mother for a buck. But this was something else. "You gotta be kidding me," he growled, his voice low and rough. He glanced in the rearview mirror, then back at the dog. It still hadn't moved. Another honk blared behind him, longer this time. All right, he snapped, waving a hand out the window like he was dismissing a bad employee. He could have driven off. Should have, maybe. He had a penthouse waiting, a glass of scotch with his name on it, a dozen calls to return. But something about that dog, that lifeless heap of fur, hit him square in the chest. He'd always had a soft spot for underdogs, the ones nobody else gave a damn about. "Nobody tells Donald Trump what to do," he said to himself, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. With a sharp turn of the wheel, he swung the Escalade to the curb, tires chirping against the asphalt. The honking stopped. The street went quiet again. He killed the engine and stepped out, the warm Miami air hitting him like a wall. His polished shoes clicked against the pavement as he crossed the street, eyes locked on the dog. Up close, it was worse than he'd thought. thin, ribs poking through its patchy coat, a collar hanging loose around its neck. No tags, no name, just scratches where something had been scraped off. Trump crouched down, resting an elbow on his knee. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice softer than usual. The dog didn't flinch, didn't even look at him. Its eyes were open, staring at nothing, like it was waiting for the end. Trump's jaw tightened. "Who does this?" he muttered, scanning the empty street. The sedan was long gone, and nobody else seemed to care. Just him and this dog, abandoned in the middle of Miami. He stood up, brushing his hands on his suit pants. "All right, pal. You're not dying on my watch." He wasn't sure why he said it, or why he cared, but he knew one thing. He wasn't leaving that dog there. Not tonight. Not ever. Donald Trump stood on a quiet Miami street, the warm night air wrapping around him like a damp towel. The dog lay at his feet, a scruffy little thing that barely registered his presence. Its eyes, dull, empty, stared past him, past the flickering streetlights, into some void Trump couldn't see. He straightened up, brushing a speck of dirt off his suit jacket. The Escalade idled across the street, its headlights cutting through the dark, painting the scene in sharp relief. He made up his mind the second he saw that scratched-off collar. "Nobody dumps a fighter like this and gets away with it," he muttered, his voice carrying that familiar mix of grit and bravado. He bent down again, sliding his arms under the dog's frail frame. It didn't resist, didn't even tense up, just let itself be lifted like a rag doll. "You're lighter than my golf bag," he said, half to himself, as he carried it back to the SUV. The dog's head lolled slightly, its matted fur brushing against his sleeve. Trump didn't flinch. He'd handled worse messes than this. Opening the back door, he set the dog on the leather seat, where it slumped into a heap, still motionless. He paused, staring at it. That collar bothered him. Old, worn, the metal tag scraped clean. Someone had wanted this dog forgotten. "Not on my watch," he said, slamming the door shut. Sliding into the driver's seat, he gripped the wheel and exhaled. The city hummed around him, distant horns, the faint pulse of salsa music from somewhere down the block. But inside the Escalade, it was just him and the dog. He adjusted the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of those vacant eyes. "You're safe now, buddy. Donald Trump doesn't leave anyone behind." He turned the key, and the engine roared to life, a deep, reassuring rumble. He pulled onto the road, the tires humming against the asphalt, his mind already racing. Vet first, then figure out who did this. Simple plan, until his phone buzzed. He fished it out of his pocket, glancing at the screen. Unknown number. Trump smirked. Probably another loser begging for a deal. He hit speaker and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. "Yeah, who's this?" he barked. A voice came through, low, raspy, like it had been dragged through gravel. "Forget the dog, old man. Drop it somewhere and drive away. You don't want this fight." Trump's smirk vanished. His fingers tightened on the wheel. "Excuse me? You don't tell Donald Trump what to do. Who the hell are you?" Silence. Then the voice again, colder this time. "You've got no idea what you just picked up. Leave it, or you'll regret it." The line clicked dead. Trump stared at the phone, his jaw clenching. "Regret it?" he scoffed. "I built empires, buddy. I don't scare easy." He tossed the phone back onto the seat, but his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. The dog hadn't moved, but something about that call gnawed at him. This wasn't just some jerk dumping a pet. There was more to it. Something dark, something he couldn't let go. He pressed the gas, weaving through the sparse traffic. The neon glow of Miami blurred past, pink, blue, green, reflecting off the Escalade's polished hood. His mind churned. That scratched-off tag, the way the guy sped off. "Now this call. What's your story, huh?" he said, glancing back at the dog. It blinked slowly, like it heard him, but didn't care. Trump's gut told him this was bigger than a stray. He'd dealt with threats before, competitors, politicians, tabloids, but this felt different. Personal. He pulled into a 24-hour vet clinic off Coral Way. The lot empty except for a flickering sign. Emergency pet care. Killing the engine, he stepped out and opened the back door. The dog didn't budge. "Come on, tough guy," he said, scooping it up again. Its ribs pressed against his hands, sharp and fragile. Inside, the vet, a tired-looking woman with glasses, took one look and frowned. "Rough shape. Where'd you find him?" Trump set the dog on the exam table. "Some coward dumped him on Biscayne. I don't leave fighters behind. She nodded, checking the collar. No name, huh? Looks deliberate. Trump crossed his arms. Yeah, and someone just called me to drop it. Threatened me. The vet paused, her eyes narrowing. You sure you want to keep this one, Mr. Trump? Sounds like trouble. He grinned, that old fire sparking in his chest. Trouble's my middle name. Fix him up. I'm not backing down. As the vet worked, Trump's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He didn't answer this time, just stared at it, the screen glowing in the dim room. The dog whimpered softly, the first sound it had made. Trump's grin faded. All right, buddy, he said, his voice low. We're in this together now. Let's see who blinks first. The Miami night had cooled slightly, the humidity settling into a thick haze as Donald Trump leaned against his Escalade in a gritty corner of the port of Miami. The vet had patched up the dog, dehydrated, malnourished, but alive, and now it sat in the back seat, still silent, still watching him with those hollow eyes. Trump had named it Phantom on a whim, a nod to its ghostly presence and the way it had slipped into his life like a shadow. You're a fighter, Phantom, he'd said, patting its head. The vet had warned him again about trouble, but trouble was an old friend to Trump. He thrived on it. His phone buzzed again as he stood by the docks, the salty tang of the ocean mixing with the diesel fumes from idling cranes. Another unknown number. He answered this time, his voice sharp. What now? You clowns don't give up, do you? A pause, then a different voice, calm, measured, not like the gravelly threat from before. Mr. Trump, I'm not with them. Meet me at the East Pier, slip 17. 10 minutes. Bring the dog. Trump's eyes narrowed. And why should I trust you, huh? I don't do blind dates. The voice stayed steady. Because I know why they're after that dog. You want answers? Be there. The line went dead. Trump glanced at Phantom through the tinted window. Looks like you're more popular than I thought, he muttered, climbing into the driver's seat. The Escalade rumbled to life, and he steered toward the pier, the city's skyline shrinking behind him. The port was a maze of shipping containers and flickering lights, the kind of place where deals went down and secrets stayed buried. He pulled up to slip 17, a rusted sign swaying in the breeze, and killed the engine. A figure stepped out from the shadows, thin, mid-40s, wearing a faded jacket and sunglasses despite the dark. Trump got out, leaving the door open. All right, mystery man. Talk. The guy nodded toward the SUV. That dog from Fighting Ring. Not the legal kind, underground, nasty stuff. They breed, break, and when they lose too many fights, they dump him. That one's a failure in their eyes. Trump's jaw tightened. So, some lowlife tossed him because he wouldn't kill? That's their big secret. The man shook his head, stepping closer. Not quite. They don't just dump him anywhere. They erase him, collar scratched, no trace. But that one? It's special. They're scared you've got it. Trump crossed his arms, the sea wind tugging at his tie. Scared of a half-dead mutt? Come on, pal. I've heard better stories from failing casinos. The man pulled off his sunglasses, revealing tired eyes. I've been tracking these guys for months. Cops won't touch him, no proof. That dog's been places, seen things. Maybe it's a loose and they can't afford. He paused, glancing at Phantom. You naming it yet? Trump smirked. Phantom. Fits him. The man nodded. Good name. Goes to their mistakes. Trump turned, studying Phantom through the open door. The dog's ears twitched slightly, the first sign of life he'd shown beyond a whimper. So what's the play here? He asked, facing the informant again. You want me to bust these punks? The man hesitated. I want you to keep that dog safe. They'll come for it. Hard. You're not just some guy who picked up a stray, Mr. Trump. You're a target now. Trump chuckled, low and rough. Target? I've been a target since I was 30. Latching try. The informant slipped a folded paper into Trump's hand. Locations, where they run the fights. Burn it after you read it. I'm out if they spot me. Trump unfolded it, scribbled addresses, dates, nothing fancy. You're a real James Bond? Huh, he said, tucking it into his pocket. The man didn't smile. Just don't underestimate him. They've got money, muscle, and no rules. He turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and check the collar again. Closer this time. Trump watched him melt back into the shadows, then climbed into the Escalade. He pulled Phantom onto the front seat, the dog's thin frame trembling slightly. Let's see what you're hiding, buddy, he said, flipping on the overhead light. The collar was beat up, the tag a scratched mess, but up close he saw it. Faint etchings, barely legible. Not a name, but numbers. Coordinates? A code? His pulse quickened. Well, I'll be damned, he muttered, running a finger over the marks. You're no ordinary stray. He started the engine, the informant's words echoing in his head. They'll come for it. Hard. Trump glanced at Phantom, now curled up beside him. Guess we got a fight on our hands, huh? The dog didn't respond, but its eyes met his, still empty, but maybe, just maybe, with a flicker of something new. Trust? Hope? Trump grinned. That's it, Phantom. We're taking these losers down. Together. The Miami dawn was breaking, a faint orange glow creeping over the horizon as Donald Trump barreled down a back road in his Escalade. Phantom sat shotgun, the dog's bony frame pressed against the leather seat, its scratched-up collar glinting faintly in the early light. Trump had left the vet clinic an hour ago, the coordinates from the collar etched into his mind. Somewhere near Hialeah, a run-down spot perfect for shady business. He wasn't sure what he'd find, but he knew one thing. Those punks who'd threatened him weren't getting away with it. Nobody messes with Donald Trump, he muttered, glancing at Phantom. Where you, buddy? The road was quiet, lined with warehouses and overgrown lots, the kind of place Miami forgot about. He'd told the vet to keep quiet. No cops, no chatter. This was personal now. His phone sat silent in the cup holder. No more calls since the port. Maybe they thought he'd back off. Fat chance. He patted Phantom's head, the dog's ears twitching at the touch. You're tougher than you look, huh? For the first time, Phantom shifted, lifting its head slightly. Trump grinned. That's the spirit. Then he saw it, a black SUV in the rearview mirror, closing fast. Too fast. Here we go, he growled, gripping the wheel. A second vehicle joined the first, headlights glaring like predator eyes. Trump floored the gas, the Escalade's V8 roaring as it surged forward. Hold on, Phantom. The dog tensed, claws digging into the seat. A sharp crack split the air, the rear window shattered, glass spraying across the back. Son of a... Trump swerved, tires screeching, as another bullet whizzed past, grazing the side mirror. He yanked the wheel hard, cutting into a narrow alley between two warehouses. The SUVs followed, engine snarling. You want to fight? You got one, he shouted, adrenaline pumping. The alley was tight, crates and trash cans lined the edges, but the Escalade plowed through, smashing debris aside. A third shot rang out, pinging off the bumper. Trump glanced at Phantom. The dog's eyes were wide now, alert, alive. Then it did something he hadn't expected. It barked. Sharp, fierce, cutting through the chaos. Attaboy. Trump laughed, a wild edge to his voice. Let him hear you. He spotted an opening ahead. A sharp turn onto a service road. Time to lose these clowns, he said, spinning the wheel. The Escalade fishtailed, kicking up gravel, then straightened out. The pursuers overshot the turn, tires squealing as they scrambled to double back. Trump didn't let up, weaving through a maze of industrial streets, the port's cranes looming in the distance. Phantom barked again, louder, leaning toward the window like it was ready to jump out and take on the world. Easy, killer, Trump said, grinning. We got this. The SUVs reappeared, one cutting across a lot to flank him. Trump cursed under his breath, scanning for an out. Up ahead, a chain-link gate blocked the road. Locked, rusted, no time to stop. Brace yourself, he yelled, aiming straight for it. The Escalade smashed through, metal screeching as the gate buckled and flew apart. Phantom yelped, ducking low but stayed put. The lead SUV wasn't so lucky. It clipped the wreckage, spinning out and slamming into a dumpster with a sickening crunch. One down, Trump hooped, pumping a fist. The second kept coming, closing the gap. Trump veered onto a wider street, traffic picking up as the city woke. He wove between cars, horns blaring, the SUV hot on his tail. A stoplight loomed ahead, red. No time to brake. He gunned it, blasting through the intersection as oncoming traffic swerved, tires screaming. The SUV tried to follow, but got clipped by a delivery truck, spinning into a pole with a thunderous crash. Trump exhaled, slowing the Escalade. That's how you do it, Phantom. He pulled into a quiet lot near the vets, catching his breath. The rear window was gone, the bumper dented, but they were alive. Phantom panted beside him, tail flicking, just once, but it was something. Trump reached over, ruffling the dog's fur. "You're a hell of a co-pilot. You know that?" Phantom met his gaze, and for the first time, there was a spark in those eyes, fierce, defiant. Trump nodded. "Yeah, you're done running. We're fighting back." He grabbed the paper from the informant, scanning the addresses again. Hialeah was close. Whatever those coordinates meant, he'd find out, and make whoever sent those goons pay. The chase wasn't over. It was just the beginning. "They want a war," he said, starting the engine. "They've got one. Right, Phantom?" The dog barked again, sharp and ready. Trump smirked. "That's my boy." The Miami sun blazed high overhead, casting harsh shadows across the cracked pavement as Donald Trump pulled his battered Escalade into a discreet lot near Hialeah. Phantom sat beside him, ears perked, the dog's newfound fire simmering in its gaze. The chase had left them both rattled but unbroken, glass shards in the back, dents on the bumper, and a story Trump was already itching to tell. He'd pieced it together. The coordinates scratched in a Phantom's collar pointed to an old warehouse a mile away, a hub for the underground fighting ring the informant had warned him about. "Time to shut this circus down," he said, patting Phantom's head. The dog huffed, almost like it agreed. Trump grabbed his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years, a retired cop-turned-private eye, someone who owed him a favor. "Mike, it's Trump. Got a job for you. Bring backup, no badges. I'm cleaning up a mess in Hialeah." He rattled off the address, then hung up. No police yet. Not until he had proof. He stepped out, Phantom hopping down beside him, the dog's tail flicking with purpose. The warehouse loomed ahead, a rusted shell surrounded by chain link and weeds. Voices echoed, faintly from inside, gruff, hurried. Trump smirked, caught him with their pants down. He slipped through a gap in the fence. Phantom close on his heels. The air stank of sweat and blood as they crept toward a side door. Inside, the scene hit him like a punch. A dirt ring stained red, cages stacked against the walls, dogs barking and whining in the dim light. Men in cheap suits barked orders, counting cash. Trump's stomach turned. "Disgusting," he muttered. He pulled out his phone, recording grainy footage but enough to bury these clowns. Phantom growled low, hackles up. "Easy, boy," Trump whispered. "We'll get him." Footsteps crunched behind him. He spun, fist raised, but it was Mike, gray-haired grizzle with two burly guys in tow. "Nice timing," Trump said, lowering his hand. Mike peeked inside, grimacing. "Fighting ring, huh? You always find the fun stuff." Trump handed him the phone. "Evidence. Take it to the cops when we're done. I want these losers locked up." Mike nodded, signaling his men. They stormed in, shouting, fists flying. Chaos erupted. Men scrambling, dogs barking louder. Trump stayed back, Phantom at his side, watching the takedown with a grim satisfaction. One thug broke free, lunging at Trump with a knife. "You're dead, old man," he snarled. Trump sidestepped, grabbing a metal pipe from the ground and swinging hard. The guy crumpled, groaning. "That's for Phantom," Trump spat, kicking the knife away. The dog barked, sharp and triumphant, tail wagging now. Mike's crew had the rest pinned. Game over. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had tipped off the law. Trump dusted off his hands. Perfect timing. Hours later, the story broke on every news channel. Trump busts illegal dogfighting ring. Saves abandoned pup. Reporters swarmed his Key Biscayne penthouse, but he waved them off, lounging on his balcony with Phantom sprawled beside him. The dog had a new collar now, shiny, engraved with Phantom in bold letters. "You're a star, buddy," Trump said, sipping a Diet Coke. Phantom's ribs were still visible, but his eyes were bright, alive. The vet said he'd recover, tougher than he looked. Trump leaned back, grinning. "Told you we'd win." His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He opened it, expecting congrats. Instead, it read, "Phantom's not the only one they lost. Check the others." Trump's grin faded. He glanced at Phantom, then at the city skyline shimmering in the heat. "Others," he murmured. The warehouse raid had freed a dozen dogs, all shipped to shelters, but that message gnawed at him. Was there more to this? A bigger ring? A deeper secret? He stood, stretching, the ocean breeze ruffling his hair. "Looks like we're not done, huh, Phantom?" The dog lifted its head, barking once, crisp, confident. Trump chuckled. "That's what I thought. Round 2 coming up." He pocketed the phone, already plotting his next move. The news called a victory, but Trump knew better. Every win opened a new fight, and he never backed down from challenge. Downstairs, the rescued dogs waited, some scarred, some scared, all with stories erased like phantoms. Trump's jaw tightened. "Nobody forgets you on my watch," he said, scratching Phantom's ears. The dog leaned into his hand, a bond forged in chaos. The text lingered in his mind, a loose thread begging to be pulled. "All right, buddy," he said, voice low and determined. "Let's find out who's next."